Welcome to AI and local government, one in a series of occasional interviews that we've been doing at Datnexa with people who are leading with AI in their sector. Today we're joined by Councillor Jim Robbins, who's the leader of Swindon Borough Council. Jim isn't just the leader of Swindon Borough Council. He's a prominent voice in the movement to modernise local government through innovation and collaboration. With over a decade of experience as a councillor, Jim's built a reputation for championing fairness, community empowerment, and actually taking practical solutions to complex challenges. He currently also serves as the chair of the Cooperative Council's Innovation Network and has also delivered not just the inaugural, but the sophomore keynote addresses for the LGAI Summit. In 2025, there were 5 main points that he made. First off, celebrating local innovation, having AI as an enabler, not a replacement for people or their jobs, sharing solutions with other councils, ensuring responsible AI is used to maintain public trust, and also articulating a sector-wide ambition for local government to maximise AI's positive impact for residents. So he's known for his approachable style, his modesty, his commitment to openness, and really has kind of like struck all of us in the sector, but especially at Datnexa here, as an impact innovator, that you can harness technology, especially AI, to deliver system-wide outcomes that are better for everyone. And really kind of shares this passion, not just for improving the lives of residents in Swindon, but across communities nationwide. So, Jim, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to stop sharing so we can see you properly. And if I may, actually, let me just throw you a bit of a curveball. We have this thing of like AI, don't believe it, like something that you've just seen that you're like, what's that about? In terms of AI, what have you seen in the past week or so that's just made you go, hang on, that's pretty cool, actually?
So I was really lucky for my birthday this year. I got a pair of Ray-Ban Metas. So these are sunglasses that are AI enabled. So I was wearing these out on the campaign trail in Bath at the weekend. And I was chatting to my local MP who was there with me, Heidi Alexander, and she was hugely impressed with these. So she took them off me, was merrily taking pictures with them, engaging with the built-in Judy Dench voice that can tell you the news and the weather, and taking pictures, sending them to Peter Kyle, who's the Minister of State for DCIT, because she's the person she knows best in the cabinet, loves AI, and yeah, he was really taken with them as well. So yeah, we had a lot of fun playing with that, and I just can't believe the technology and the way that it's developing at the moment. It's really impressive.
It feels like there's a new thing every day, right? And it's always going there. And also that's a great example of something where you've got a physical presence of like a manifestation of what can often be just behind a computer screen. It's starting to emerge in everyday life. Yeah, I'm really excited to see where that ends up. Like, kind of, what's the equivalent of Google Maps when you're looking at these sorts of worlds, or what is the BBC going to do? You know, kind of, what's public service in that setup? That's very cool stuff. Did you get a response, or is that a comment?
Yeah, he did. He messaged back and was very taken with them, and yeah, said that he wanted his own pair, I think.
That's cool. Are you on commission? Meta?
I don't think so. I need to be.
That is cool. So down to business. I think kind of one of the things that's always struck us at Datnexa about your speeches, your keynotes, and when you've been sharing things across the centre, is you speak passionately about using AI, but not in some of the ways that kind of focus on the efficiency part. Actually, more on the value part, kind of like it as a means to empower people and kind of communities. And I know in Swindon you've got a great team there, and you've been working with them over the course of the past few years, and you're actually making a real difference to people's daily lives with really kind of practical things, tangible things that people can learn from. Could you give us a couple of examples where you see that happening, and anything that maybe surprised you about it?
I think there's a few things that we've done in the past that have been really successful. So we started off with a program that could take if someone sends in a picture of some fly tipping, we had a program that could help us estimate the right vehicle and team to go and pick it up. So rather than wasting time sending out a team of people to pick up something that only needed one person in a small van, you know, we weren't doing that. But also, if we knew straight away that this was going to be something really big, we could send the right size vehicle and the right amount of people to deal with it. And it's amazing how the AI could tell much better than just a member of staff could from looking at the picture and thinking. So the estimating skills were a lot better than ours, than human estimating skills. And then the other one that was a really big success for us, we had some translation software made that enabled real-time software. So we were sharing that with Bristol Council, and they had an issue where they needed to evacuate a tower block very quickly, and the app was able to help them get the right information to people, no matter what their background was and what their first language was. They could get that first vital bit of information to people about they needed to get out and where they were going to go to them as quickly as possible. And it just wouldn't have been possible trying to get a team of translators to do that work in the middle of that sort of incident. So those have been really positive. And then really exciting that at the moment we're working with the government, with DSIT, on trialling a government tool called Minute, which is about transcribing and summarising council meetings to help officers and members. And I think the main reason the government have got involved in this space, obviously there's lots of other tools around on the market that can do this, but they wanted one that was where the information and the data was going to be held within the government still, so that it wasn't a case of all of that information and those conversations being sent off to some company somewhere that might, you know, I think the government are really keen to keep control of that sort of data. And those are the sort of ethical and security and risk conversations we're having all the time about making sure that what we're doing is getting the benefits of AI and all of the positives that it brings, but we're also doing it in a way that is really responsible with public data and trying to make sure we're not taking any unnecessary risks. Yeah,
I mean, that's so important, isn't it? Kind of ensuring that you've got something that people can kind of trust, because they've trusted you with their data and their information, to kind of make sure that you're treating it appropriately and kind of working out the best way to do that. And I mean, for something like that, there's quite a few elements within there. Do you, like, if just tracking back to some of those tools, are you kind of seeing residents being, you know, do they kind of appreciate the fact that the AI is there, especially for kind of like the fly tipping? Is it something, or they just care about the service in the first place, and actually being able to deliver a better service is their focus instead of kind of like the tools that are going on behind the scenes?
So I think there probably isn't a single response. There are some members of the public who are really excited by the prospect of AI, really into it, and they really want to know the details behind how it's working and what the project is. There are others who are very much about the service and what is the outcome for them as a resident. And then I think there are some that are a little concerned about AI. So we've got a really good new member of staff who's heading up our team in this area. And one of the things that I've been talking to her about is how we can try and do some more resident engagement sessions and really just have the conversation with residents about AI and how we are looking to use it going forward. And I think that's a really important part of how we need to do it. Very much something where we want to take residents with us, rather than something we're doing to residents and then having them concerned or worried about the prospects of it. Let's get out there, do that engagement, have the conversation with them, and let them help us to determine what is the best way forward and how best to manage these conversations about risks and ethics that inevitably come with AI.
That's interesting. It's the one of our previous guests was so Ant Fawkes, who talks about like data governance and things like that, and he was kind of there's a lot of things out there that you can look at, and there'll be regulation to come, and there's a lot of guidelines, but his one principle was, would you be happy if it was you that your data was being used in that way? And it's just such a good way of kind of thinking about it, and that getting ahead of people's fears, kind of letting people know what's going on, is going to help overall. Are you finding that there's any themes that you're hearing back? Is it all about the transparency? Is it all about the security, or is it a mix of everything?
I think it's a bit of a mix of everything. There are some residents that are really concerned about the sort of the data and where any of their personal data is going to end up. There are some that are all about, they think the technology is really cool and they can see the benefits of it, and they want us to sign up to every bit of, AI going. And we're just trying to find what are the solutions that are really going to help us deal with problems. We haven't got enough cash to be able to do everything that we want. So trying to make sure we're making really sensible decisions about where we're putting our time, and what what tools we can use, and what are the problems that we're trying to fix. Those are the sort of the questions that we're really interested in, to make sure that we're using our resources as carefully as we can at a time when we know that local authorities aren't swimming in money.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few bits that kind of make you think. Local government's been really fast at adopting a lot of AI technology. Looking at some of the things that are happening on the national level as well, you feel that local government's probably stolen a bit of a march, precisely because AI offers this sort of efficiency, aspect. So I guess there's a couple of points within there. One, do you feel that there's sort of a learning process that can take place, saying that you're using the central government minute setup? Are there things that central government could learn from local government? And I guess the other thing that seems to be emerging is, like you say, there's a lot of different solutions out there. Is there any advice in terms of working out what the problems are to find the best solutions? Because that's something I know a lot of people have been struggling with recently.
So I think there probably is stuff that the central government could learn from local government. I think local government have been sort of forced to innovate, really, because of the financial challenges that we've got at the moment, and we are always looking at new ways to do things and how can we spend our scarce resources as wisely as possible. But that has meant that there has been an appetite. We aren't risk averse. We are happy to try things and see if they work. And I think you need to have that in place. But I think it's trying to not see AI just as a tech issue, I think, is really important. So let's have a think about what are the problems that we are trying to solve? Where are the bits that we can be helped by AI or other digital solutions, other ways of going forward? It doesn't have to be AI that's going to be potentially the answer to every problem that we've got, but there will be all sorts of data and digital responses that we can take. And just trying to really make sure that we're looking at what we're doing, we're thinking about those ethical and those just all of the bits around what we're trying to do, and making sure that where it's going to have an impact on residents, we're really thinking about what we're doing. How can we use the sort of the democratic process to make sure there are some checks and balances in there for people? And how do we make it part of, AI is just a really sensible part of public reform and the work that we're doing as we try and deal with the challenges that are facing us as a country.
It's I'm going to have to cross off one of my later questions. I was going to say, AI isn't just technical change, it's social change, true or false, but you've just kind of said
definitely.
It is. That's really interesting how you kind of tie it into that real world impact, and also that democratic process. When you're approaching these things, kind of is it a committee? Is it a process? How do you get to grips with actually making that a reality?
So most of the proposals have come from our emerging tech team and are officer driven, in that they're the experts in the field that are looking at these the sort of the options that are there for us, and then they come to us on the sort of the political front for us to give a steer as to how we feel about them, and do we think that they're a project worth pursuing. And I think we're really lucky that because our team of officers have been really good over time, we have seen that they've done really well, but they're really open and honest with us. They've said that not everything they bring forward as a solution is going to be successful. There are going to be times when things don't work, so don't think of this as a magic bullet which is always going to be right. We've got to try things, we've got to trial them, we've got to make sure that they work on the ground and that they deliver what we expect them to deliver. And yeah, we're really clear that we're not expecting that emerging tech team to come up with something that is suddenly going to deliver a huge amount of savings in terms of money, and certainly not in terms of job losses or anything like that. We've always been really clear that we want to see AI being resident focused first and supporting us to make, better, to be able to better support our residents in Swindon. And yeah, just trying to keep that human impact front and centre. And then we have got a cross council working group that we've set up on AI, which is there just to look at some of these issues and really think about what we're trying to do at the moment.
So you've kind of got that thing where you've got a problem, you've got human, so it's human focused, and also you're thinking about some of the problems that you want to solve with this equipment as well. It's not just kind of, oh, there's a new shiny thing. Actually, it's fundamentally rooted in reality, and that's what's giving everything else traction.
Definitely, and we try to make sure that we've got the governance processes around it so that there are some checks and balances in place to make sure that we're not just going off willy-nilly with a load of people's data and just trying something. Really making sure that we're careful to think about some of the potential risks before we get going. We know that there are risks in some of this work, and we just have to be really clear and careful about doing that. It's important that we're innovators within local government, but we don't want to be taking unnecessary risks. Some of the people that we're working with are really vulnerable, really need our support, and we don't want to be just going off and using them as a testing ground for stuff. We've got to be really confident that this is a good idea before we do it, and that we've taken time to think about the checks and balances that need to be in place to protect people.
Yeah, it's how do you feel? I mean, perhaps this leads on from that, but when you have that need to deliver not just for the public, but to deliver on public trust as well. So a lot of the audience are not from local government, have been working in different sectors, but often are in regulated spaces where you need to have a level of trust, or just want to do the right thing in a corporate setting. How do you go about building trust in this new, and sometimes people treat it cynically or kind of hear the worst case scenario. What is it that kind of helps you make the case to them?
So I think one of the really big things we've tried to do as a new administration coming in Swindon is just be really open and transparent with people. And where we've got difficult questions that we're trying to answer, we try and involve residents with them, because I think the worst thing you can do is try and hide some of those difficult bits away from people and not be transparent with them, because they know that they exist. And if they can see that you're properly wrestling with them, then they feel much more confident that you are taking the time to try and get the decision right. And asking their advice is definitely not seen as a weakness. It's seen as a really a sign of strength, that you're comfortable in that you are dealing with tricky decisions and you want to get that advice and guidance to help you do it right. And I think that's something that's it's proved time and time again for us as administration across the board in all sorts of ways that we're working, that open and transparency has been the right way to go.
Yeah, it's a good diverse design is good design. You get kind of stress tests from all the different perspectives. So everything sounds really good and going well. What hasn't gone as well, or what kind of major learnings have you taken away from the process so far, where you think, oh, I wish I'd done that differently, or kind of the slight negatives that we kind of get in reality?
So I think one of the things that we really need to do, and it's what we're really focusing on at the moment, is really embedding the stuff that we've got with staff, and making sure that all staff feel comfortable with it, and that it's not just the emerging tech team or small groups of people who feel really comfortable in this space driving stuff forward, but that we're actually taking the time to make sure that everything we're doing fits with the organisation. We don't want to just rush into trends. We want to really think about the impact and make sure that we can sustain it and embed it in what we're doing. So there are, we've had this the trial on Minute, and we've done work in other departments around minute taking tools and things like that, but I'm not sure that we can say that we've embedded those across the organisation in a way that every single department feels really comfortable being able to use those. So I think that's something that we're really working on at the moment. And I think we're getting into that space where we don't just want to buy in AI tools. We want to really make sure that we've got these skills internally to be able to design them and use them in a way that really suits the residents here in Swindon. So what can we do with tools like natural language processing? So really just trying to get all of our thoughts and strategies in place so that we can be really comfortable that when we move forward, we're moving forward really sensibly as an organisation in a way that we feel comfortable with.
Yeah, that's kind of, you've sounds like you've hit a certain level of maturity with this stuff, that it's not just about the initial pilot. And it's interesting, you kind of see this idea of the desert of public sector pilots, of things that have kind of gone in, they've been used in that context, but then when you try and scale it, it doesn't quite land, or it doesn't quite work. And you're kind of thinking about that in a way that has evolved from, right, let's just use this tool, into let's get everyone using it, and bringing everyone along with that and being able to use it as well. Again, it's like an extension of that transparency piece, isn't it? If you can kind of get everyone around the table involved in designing and deploying and kind of understanding how it all works. If you were restarting tomorrow, so kind of you've just walked in and there's literally nothing, from where you are now and kind of getting into that process, is there anything that you would kind of say, follow this principle to get that sense of scale or sustainability that you've kind of got now because you've hit that point? Is there anything that, if you were starting from day one, that would be good to get in?
So I think a big part of what we're doing is all around education and trying to let people know. So there's a real varying across the organisation in about how much people really understand what AI is, what is it, what it isn't, I think is just as important. There's bits in there about data science, machine learning, all of these different parts that contribute. And I think it's trying to make sure that we've got a staff team that can understand what they're trying to do, get some real fluency in them so that they can make big informed decisions that are really going to support the residents that they're trying to work with. I think there's work for us to do around procuring AI and what we can do to make sure that the teams really understand they've got some good guidance about what they're doing in that space. And then we're running our staff survey that we run every year fairly soon. And one of the things that we've added into that is some questions about AI, just to really try and measure staff's understanding of where we are, what are their attitudes around AI, is there stuff that they're concerned about, so that we can then try and tailor some of what we're doing to make sure that we're allaying some of their concerns, giving them a bit more confidence, and that they can see that we are taking it seriously in terms of the ethical standpoint, in terms of being risk aware but not risk averse. And hopefully we can get them to trust us, come with us on the journey, and they can see the benefit of it. And yeah, there are certainly staff who have used some of the AI tools, and they're huge evangelists for it now. They're really pleased. They can see, there are teams where they were spending hours writing up the minutes for meetings, and then trying to fill out some of the forms for residents and make sure that they captured everything that came out of the meeting. And AI is brilliant at that sort of stuff. And they can see a real benefit that they can get AI to do a lot of the sort of the donkey work on that, and then they can come in and just try and finesse it and make sure that it works. And it is saving them a huge amount of time. And then we're trying to get them to use that time to be back out with residents, forward facing, and really be able to drive forward what they're doing and work with more people.
It's there's so many of the principles of applying AI well. You just seem to be reeling them off there. It's really cool to hear, the idea of it's doing tasks, not jobs. Kind of the idea that it kind of takes away a whole tier of work that you didn't want to do anyway, that then now lets you focus on the things that you want to. It's interesting with with what is AI and not AI. We kind of recently launched a mini MBAI.com, in fact. But we're doing it as an in-person thing. But we started doing an online version. So we took our AI 101 course and we put it out there, and we were like, what's the feedback on it? And what's interesting is, of all of the different things that we've got in there, we've got things about regulation, we've got things about the putting a project together, what works. but the most popular piece is the AI 101 building blocks of AI. And it's all of the different technologies as they kind of stack up before you get to like what we're calling AI at the moment. And I think kind of that understanding is really interesting, because there's a lot of things that are already out there or have been out there for quite a long time, that deliver tremendous value, and they're almost like your on-ramp to AI, and you don't need to go that far. But what it does is it builds up confidence in using this equipment in a slightly different way. It delivers stuff perhaps at a lower price point because you've not got the shiny AI banner on it. It's a lot better for the planet often because it's not using as energy intensive stuff. But yeah, it's just so interesting that process makes makes it easier for people to get their head around it. And yeah, I think kind of the idea of the evangelists, the people who've seen kind of the potential, not just thought about it, but actually delivered on it, then going out there. There's nothing more powerful than that. Yeah, I think kind of the other bit that is interesting is you've got that view within the council of bringing everyone up to speed or kind of understanding that. Is it too soon to say, or have you seen any specific skills or areas of knowledge that people want more of, or is it kind of very much dependent on teams or kind of where people sit?
I think it's probably too early to say. I think there's still quite a bit of work for us to do. One of the things that's really exciting about where we are at the moment is we're doing a big internal transformation piece around the council anyway, which is part of our dealing with the financial challenges facing the sector. And one of the work streams within that is all around data and digital. And I think that's something that over the next few years is going to be really interesting about, can we take people on that journey with us? How do we get these tools being built into everything that we're doing as we come up with a new target operating model for the organisation? And can we bring everyone with us on the journey? And how difficult is that going to be? So I think a lot of it at the moment is around really understanding the data that we've got as an organisation, because in order for us to be running really good AI solutions, we need to have some really strong data to underpin it. Have we got that right data in place? Have we got, one of the things we've been trying to do at the organisation is get rid of some of the silo working that we've had, where, if you were in children's services, you would never work with someone from housing services or whatever. And I think in order for us to be getting some really good cross-cutting work out of this that really helps us change the way that we're operating, if we can go down that route of getting rid of those silos, getting our data into a really strong position, they're going to be the foundations that really underpin how we can take this forward as a piece of work. Yeah,
it's the multidisciplinary team around the table, and that's always where we've kind of had stuff where we've sat down with everyone who's kind of a potential stakeholder or kind of a friend of a stakeholder almost. It's like, come along to this meeting and let's talk about AI or kind of using data in a different way. And it's surprising how often you're introducing people to one another from the same organization, especially if it's a larger corporate or something like that, where that cross collaboration, and actually sometimes that first meeting, even though no like technical work's happened, does help kind of deliver on a sense of value, because you start to get people thinking in that sort of cross system way. And I think that makes sense. The other thing that we found, to be interesting to see if you have the same, is that when you have such a range of different perspectives around the table, and also when kind of people think about local government, they don't always realize that the breadth of what's going on, and kind of the skill set that you need perhaps for like housing or environment or planning is very different to adult social care or children's, that you have a vast range of different perspectives, experiences around the table. So we've always found it really useful to like have a very powerful mission or a North Star, like a very clear sense of what the objective of this project is, or the delivery of the tool. And I guess kind of in the local government setting, we've always framed it in the problem that we've been commissioned to solve. And that, is kind of what keeps everyone aligned on track, because everyone's heading from different places. Do you kind of do that, or is there a different sort of method? How do you keep everyone on track when they're coming from different spaces?
So I think what we're trying to do is bring together the organisation. We've got a really clear mission that we've set ourselves as an organisation. So we've got our 3 missions as a council, which we call the Swindon Plan. So that's to build a fairer Swindon, build a greener Swindon, and build a better Swindon. And I think we try and land everything that we're doing as an organisation within those missions. But then I think as we get into the specifics around projects, making sure that we're really clear about what we're trying to achieve, and that we do that sort of requirements gathering, which is really important, getting a real understanding of what it is that we're looking to do, really clear outcomes that we're trying to deliver. And then the other thing that's been really important, I think, is getting those early projects, returning, a return on investment in those, getting that, and making sure that people can see that there's some value in this, and that there are projects which we have delivered which have made a real difference. That's the thing that's really helped in terms of being able to take it forward and start on the next business case, because the feedback is that these projects are ones that work within the organisation and they've been successful and they are delivering. And that's been really important, just to help gather that bit of momentum behind what we're doing and make it work. Yeah,
it is so true. It's kind of like the momentum, the confidence, it all goes hand in hand, a lot of this stuff. And the more you do, kind of like the more you learn about it, but also it just adds to that kind of sense of this is happening and it's working. And I suppose kind of gives you your evangelists as well as it goes
Definitely.
through.
And I think the other thing I have to say is I've been really lucky with the officers that we've had working here. So that's made a real difference, because from a political point of view, I can try and drive things forward as the leader of the council. But unless there's really good officers in place who are understanding what they're doing and not overselling and saying that this is going to be the magic bullet that solves all of the council's problems, but they're actually really pragmatic, really sort of outcome driven and really focused. That's been the thing that's made a real difference for me. And I've been really lucky to come in and get the credit for some of the brilliant work that they do on a regular basis.
I love that. It's I heard a saying recently that if you think you've got a solution that solves it all, you've clearly not understood the problem well enough.
Definitely.
And it is, the reality of it. We've also started, kind of, I think there's that thing of when something comes in, it's really bright and shiny, and everyone's like, oh wow, it's going to do everything, and then you get hands on with it, and it doesn't do everything. But actually, the real art form is reconciling those 2 points and then focusing on where you want to be. You've learnt a lot in Swindon, and you've gotten to the point now where you're thinking, how do we, I guess, standardise across the organisation and kind of ensure that we consolidate on our gains and then lock it in across the board, which I think to a lot of the corporate audience kind of makes sense in terms of their delivery plan. What you have in local government is different to other sectors that we've been talking to, as in it's not a competitive space as such. You're not competing, with the London Borough of Barnet, for instance, for customers. It is collaborative. What are you doing in terms of spreading the word and working with other local authorities? What would you like to do even?
So through my role on the Co-op Council's Innovation Network, we've helped them come up with some AI toolkits for organisations to use, local authorities to use, and hopefully that gets them asking some of the questions and avoiding some of the challenges and pitfalls that we found along the way. And I think we see that partnership working as really important. And I think, because you're right, there isn't that sort of competition that we've got with some of the other councils that we work with. We can share best practice really easily. We can talk to them and get really good advice and guidance where they're not trying to we're not going to suddenly be trying to poach residents in Bristol or Scotland or wherever, are we? So we can work together and share those good ideas. And hopefully that makes a real difference in us being able to improve the work that we're doing and make sure that we are, if we've gone through and done a piece of work where we thought about some of the challenges and the risks, we're more than happy to share that with people so that it helps them along the journey and they can see the sort of things that we were thinking about when we came up with a plan. and hopefully we can learn from other people, because we know that we're not going to have all of the right answers in Swindon. There will be stuff that people are working on elsewhere that will be really helpful to us, and if we can get that collaboration right, that goes a long way to us being able to really deliver and make a real impact for Swindon residents, and then hopefully we can pass that on to other places so they can do the same for their residents.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it ties into that sort of central government piece as well, that there's a lot of things that could be kind of picked out, could be shared, and kind of learn from our mistakes and go and make your own.
Definitely.
Going on that. I mean, do you kind of see that what's the risk of that not happening? If if a siloed approach is taken, would you see would larger councils with more resources pull ahead? Would you kind of begin to see a bit of a digital divide emerging? I think it's good to think about how it can go, if everyone did do it. But what are the real risks if it doesn't happen?
So I think within local government, politics always rears its head at various points, and I'm sure that there will be places that aren't going to want to share some stuff with partners because of political conversations and those sorts of dynamics. But in the main, hopefully, because officers are not as political as us politicians, hopefully they can help us to make some sensible decisions and get us sharing in a really sensible way going forward. I think the new mayoral combined authorities that are being set up all over the place hopefully will encourage local authorities who aren't already working in partnership across a wider area to get into that space and be able to do things. But there's always a lot of competing pressures on our time as local authorities, and we haven't got as many resources as we'd want. And can we always build that really good, sensible time in for sharing to make sure that we do make sensible decisions and learn from other people's mistakes? It can be easy just to crack on your own and get into that sort of siloed position. So I think we need to be really careful that we are reaching out, trying to be as collaborative as possible, and that's where we're going to get the value. And I think it's for us to not just stop at local authorities as well. There's plenty of other public service providers that we can work with, whether it's health colleagues or police and the emergency services. How can we best share our information and data to be able to get systems working for everyone?
Yeah. It's that, I think you've touched upon this point before, is of sort of a healthy AI ecosystem across community partners, local businesses, people who are present and playing a part in civic life, and then across the board kind of spread that out. And certainly the LGAI UK, where we've got that community practice, it seems there's a good geographic spread, political spread, a lot of people from not just within the UK, but kind of like the wider world kind of attending things. So it seems that best practice is kind of starting to share, and I think that's a really good thing. That ecosystem kind of does foster innovation in different areas, and being able to swap over from one piece to another again is really powerful. I think kind of the big question at the moment is one of like how far to go, how fast to go, to kind of really understand, kind of getting our heads around it, if you will. And the quicker we can, the more value we can get from it. And when you kind of look at the bigger economic piece and the value that it could bring to a services-based economy like the UK, there's a lot to be going on. And I think kind of just to touch upon a slightly bigger piece, but when it comes to regulation and kind of we're seeing, the EU's kind of gone for a really big chunky piece of regulation. Other nations have gone for a patchwork approach or voluntary codes, and Britain has this opportunity to kind of really strike a balance in terms of how this stuff works. Is there anything, given the position that you hold within public life as an innovator who takes guardrails very seriously, is there anything in that space that you think would be good advice to regulators to kind of think about as they define what they're doing for their own sector?
So I think it's a really difficult one, because there certainly needs to be regulation, and we want to make sure that we're doing what we can to make sure everything we're doing is in alignment with that. But I think AI, it can't be about just the hype. It's got to be about us working really sensibly as public sector organisations, thinking about what we can do to get the cultural transformation that we want to see in our areas, and how do we get AI and digital tools and tech to help us on that journey. We need to be making really sensible choices about the tools that we use. And yeah, how do we, the work that we're doing at the moment as an organisation, how do we build those skills and capability and not just chase the latest bit of tech or the new toy that's on the market? And we want to make sure that where we use AI in Swindon, we're doing it really sensibly, ethically, transparently, and with a real purpose and outcome for our residents. And if we can do that, I think that's really important, and that's where it'll demonstrate the value and the sort of the risk averse, but well, not risk averse. It's that we're looking into the risk and we're dealing with it sensibly. And I suppose if there are data ethics frameworks, things like that, that we can think about, how do we get ourselves into a position where we've got the right tools for us in terms of that regulation that help us to make sensible decisions, but don't shut off some of the opportunities that are there for us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a tricky question. I thought I'd save it up to the last. You know, and if there was a right answer, I think we could, we could wrap up the whole ball game there. It's so much about what it is that you want to do with it, and I think kind of as it's a social issue as well, you've kind of, it's what do we want to do with it kind of really makes a massive difference. Okay, cool. I've got some quick fire questions because social media loves the quick fire, so we'll go for that. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and then I'm not saying a one-word answer because that's an incredibly cruel thing to do to any elected representative. But if I could ask you to give me your quick fire responses to, right, what is the most useful way that AI is helping your council today?
It is freeing up members of staff to be able to be much more forward-facing with residents on a daily basis.
And what do you think will be the most useful thing AI is doing for your council tomorrow in the future?
I'm hoping that it will allow us to rebuild the organisation to get into a space where we can be much more, what's the word I'm looking for? I think we need to get into a space where we are preventative rather than reactive. And I think that will be the thing that it allows us to do. And that's going to be the thing that makes a real difference. Yeah,
absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's kind of that idea of making it all proactive and kind of you're reaching out and everything like that. Yeah. That is the promised land. Right. If you could just fully automate one service entirely with AI, which would it be?
Part of me wants to say the politicians, can we just get scrutiny and all of that done by AI so that we don't have to have all of the arguments? I suppose it's got to be around, you know, children's services, things like that, where we're dealing with the most vulnerable. If we could have really good services in there that could make sure that we were really proactive, really preventative, that would have the biggest impact. That's
the I don't know. I think you may get a lot of agreement for replacing the politicians with AI, dare I say. So if you were to sum up for residents who, you know, may not be aware of all the good work that's going on, how's AI making life easier for residents at the moment?
So I think we are using tools to make sure that our staff are as productive as possible and that they can be as forward-facing and out there being proactive in supporting residents as much as we can. So anything we can do to limit the sort of the bureaucracy and the form filling and all the things that we need to do so that we've got that good data, but making that as easy and automated as possible so that we can be out there speaking to residents, understanding their concerns and supporting them with their lives.
Yeah, that sounds fair. And then, so the final one is, what is that one sentence that you would give as a piece of advice to all council leaders who are watching this, or anyone who's thinking, actually, let's make it a bit broader. to any business leader, anyone who's responsible for delivering on services for people, what's the one thing, if they just do one thing, what would it be?
So one of our team recently went to a conference and saw Anthony Seldon speaking, and she told me what he said, and it really struck me as something that seems really sensible. So as the world becomes more machine, we must become more human. And I think that's the bit that really works for me, is everything that we've got to do is keeping that human impact of what we're doing front and centre. And if we do that, we won't go far wrong.
Well, that is a incredibly good sentiment, I think, and probably something to kind of finish up on. I think you've kind of really hit the nail on the head, and it's in many ways what you've been up to in terms of delivering on residents and putting them first, and really kind of thinking about what is it that we do that's different to all of that. Yeah, that was brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today, Jim. And that was a pleasure.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. And we're going to have you back on to hold you up against all of those answers in a year's time to be like, right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. It's the least we could do. But
well,
yeah,
I'm really lucky. So we're in a position where we've just recruited a couple of new people into the team. And if they're as good as they appear to be, we'll be flying in a year's time. So I'm really lucky.
That is amazing. That is amazing. And, kind of it'd be good to hear kind of back and how it goes, and also how we can share that further amongst the sector, but also kind of people who want to approach AI as a force for good and deliver on that big ideas, bold tech and better tomorrow ethos. So brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. It's always good to catch up.